Warning, this podcast typically features spoilers and strong opinions. Proceed with caution. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Two Grooms, One Plot, the podcast where two married, lifelong storytellers talk about stories. I'm Pavi Proczko, audiobook narrator, author, actor, etc.
And I'm Colin Funk, childhood development expert and teaching artist.
And today we're going to be talking about a classic, A Mighty Wind. Very funny that it's like not rolling off the tongue, even though I just did this. As you can tell, we're in our wearing the same thing probably.
Yeah, we don't know when this is going to
we'll
get
see
released,
when this releases, but
we did just record another episode.
So check that out. It was the I just did the episode. Oh my God. Leave the world behind. So check that. You can compare our outfits. Anyway, so but we'll start with a moment of the week.
Great. That means we have to come up with another one now.
Yep. I've been reading The Ninth House by Lee.
Yeah.
Bardugo. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I don't remember your name. It's very good. The Ninth House, about Yale and the secret societies and that they're actually magical. And it's really, really interesting. I said a little bit about it in a previous episode, but it's, I got to, there's a moment where you learn finally kind of like a lot of this backstory about the main character and kind of this secondary character that they like switch back and forth with the narration is between those two. And about halfway through, like one of them disappears and you kind of like get the sense that one of them has disappeared throughout. My point is like the trickle of information is really, really clever. Cool. And the way that they move through time in this book is really interesting, and how events in the past, it's very like It almost, where it's like events in the past line up story-wise as like a story moment later on in the story is really interesting.
Nice. And it's Lee Bardugo?
Lee Bardugo, yes. Prolific author. And it's very good. The Ninth House. It's good.
Yes. Great.
Yeah.
It does that. Yeah, you were telling me about it. It sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
We've been watching, what's it called?
Lady Dynamite?
No, Lady Dynamite.
Human Resources?
Human Resources is what I was talking about. I love Lady Dynamite, and it's excellent. It's perfect.
Yes.
But Human Resources, I just think it's really interesting. I like that they take I had a big problem with the first season of
Big Mouth?
Oh my God. We've just used up all of our brain power apparently.
Yeah, all the Adderall is just out of the system. We just took a bathroom break. It just peed it out.
Oh my God. Yes, the first season of Big Mouth, I was like, but the hormone monsters was the only external
like the magic
of their
component was weird.
Yeah, where it was like, well, the hormone monster is like the reflection of their inner being as teenagers, but like they were inconsistent.
Yeah.
Where sometimes it was like just horniness, sometimes it was just, but it was like, but each person was different, and each and I was like, I'm a little confused. And when they started introducing other creatures, like the shame wizard and the anxiety mosquitoes and
the
like
depression
the depression cat.
Yeah.
When they started adding those in, I'm like, oh, okay, we're rounding them out, and that's why it can be inconsistent, because it's not meant to be every part of their inner being,
right? Which
is what it felt like they were setting up. The first season. So I liked that when they started incorporating that more. I'm like, okay, I can get kind of on board.
Yeah. And
so to like pull those out and kind of put them in an office setting, very silly, very funny. Like I think the concept is funny.
Yeah.
And I think they do a good job at using different inner feelings and inner pieces of our inner selves and how those things kind of relate. And I think there's the one episode we watched recently where there's a scene where there's two girls who are like, they're dating and they're so excited because they're going to go to college together, and like the love bug and the ambition gremlin are like in the room cheering them on. And I'm watching that, I'm like, that's interesting, because I feel like immediately seeing the two of them together, like I knew what the tension was.
Yeah.
It was like that, and I thought that the tension was going to be, oh, we're going to see tension between ambition and following a relationship, because we see very often it's a trope. We're like, oh, high school sweethearts, they're dating and now they're going to go to different colleges.
Right.
What's going to happen? Very, very common.
Yeah.
And to see it kind of from the perspective of this tension between, because it's not really about them, it's a tension between
the personified feelings.
Yeah.
The personified kind of forces in your life, in your psyche.
And to kind of like make it meta and like talk about the talking about kind of is very interesting.
Well, it's like they have a relationship themselves and they like deceive each other.
But they sometimes, when they get along, it's great. We see them getting along at first and how they're not necessarily not connected. They do have a relationship.
Right.
They are working together.
Yeah.
And then when it becomes a conflict, like we see the love bug setting something up that ends up, ruining the love.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Because the ambition was ignored. So it's like, it's really interesting. Yeah.
It's interesting.
It's like how many layers that it shows us how kind of like when we are not like attuned to ourselves.
Yeah. We can't, if we're not like fostering every piece of ourselves.
Yeah. Then it falls apart. We can't just rely and lean on one.
Actually, it's just like we talk about in any sort of development or inner world. Like nothing is actually independent from each other. Yeah. Everything's intertwined.
Right. Yeah. I think it's really interesting. I like it too. I like that they like take that show rather than being just about like how horny kids are, that they like expand it to lots of adult relationships where it's like the mother and the baby, and it's really interesting seeing those teams of monsters dealing in all sorts of relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's get to our Switch Hit
Let's
synopsis.
do it. A Mighty Wind.
Yeah. I mean, classic mockumentary.
Christopher Guest mockumentary.
And it follows, it is a
like a
famous
festival.
Producer in the folk music world has died.
Yes.
And so his son and his children essentially are putting together a benefit concert. I don't know if a benefit, but a concert.
Yeah, like a in memoriam for his memory.
For him. And then so we follow them, but we're also following the musicians that they've invited to this concert.
Yep.
That being the Main Street Singers, the folks, the three folksmen.
The three folksmen and
Mitch and Mickey.
Mitch and Mickey.
And I think we end up following Mitch and Mickey's story a little bit more closely than the other ones.
Yeah, they're the ones with the most to grow.
Yes.
Because we see we learn about a lot of their pasts because they're like old stars in the folk world, and we see kind of like how the relationships have
like performing together for a while.
Yeah, and that they had a big falling out, and we kind of don't really know why. And they had a big their big hit song ends with a kiss. Mm-hmm. So we watch, as they get together, like it takes a while to get Mitch to sign on, even though Mickey has said yes already, and Mitch, acquiesces. He decides to do it, and we kind of see that hemming and hawing a little bit, because as the show even begins, he kind of disappears. He needs some convincing earlier on, but as he's about to go on, he's like not in the theater, and then he comes back with a rose. They sing their song, and they do their trademark kiss, which seems to maybe
rekindle something, maybe. And then both of them are like, oh.
Yeah, like 6 months later, they're like,
I
just
they hadn't thought it would meant anything.
Yeah.
I haven't seen them since.
Right.
Like, both of them kind of say the same thing.
Yeah.
And it like leaves that question. It's like, did it mean something?
Right.
To either of you, to both of you,
Yeah.
to only one of you? Who knows? It's
Right.
unclear, and it's just like very sad.
Yeah. And so as a plot, as a synopsis, it's like very sparse because it's like
It's sparse.
it's a small story. There's not a whole lot of story as it is just like watching. We learn about these groups in the past, and we learn what they're like today and kind of how they interact with the music. And it just it all just comes to a head with Mitch and Mickey singing their song.
Yeah.
And finally kind of like having a moment of coming together and then coming back apart, and everything kind of goes back to the way it was.
Yeah.
In large part,
It's very interesting. It's like this is, you had mentioned this the other day about Christopher Guest movies, and that he is very good at like finding these moments where these people kind of like on the outskirts get like, this is their one shining moment to do something.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really end in like, it's never like a rags to riches story.
Right.
Where like
it's a 15 minutes of fame story.
It's 15 minutes of fame story.
Yeah.
And I think that makes for very interesting storytelling.
Yeah.
Which we get to play a lot.
We get really weird characters.
We get very extreme characters.
Yeah, that they don't really fall into any clear archetypes.
They're like almost their own archetypes because they're so specific.
Yeah.
And extreme.
Yeah.
Like these, but based on, he takes like folk singers are kind of, we picture as kind of odd members of society.
Right.
And they don't quite align with maybe the social norms.
Yeah, I mean, we see examples of that in his other ones too, where it's like we see, all for your consideration, they're like weird Hollywood actors. In Waiting for Guffman, they're weird like community theater actors, and I know those people really well. I don't know Best in Show, the dog trainers as well, but I bet that they're weirdos too.
I'm sure.
And so it's like going deep into like weirdo land, and it's really uncanny just how well he's able to, the verisimilitude of his work, where it's like replicating what it is actually like.
Yeah.
Is like not that far off. It's not like at all far off.
No, right. He's smart that way.
Yeah, it's like it is funny and it's extreme, but it's like just at the very, very edge of real.
Yeah. I mean, if we transition this right into things that work, like we're looking at this folk music is the focus of the mockumentary,
right?
Like I don't know anything about dog shows. I didn't when I saw it. I still don't really now.
Yeah.
But like watching it, I don't.
Like Best in Show, you mean?
Best in Show.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how close it was to that because
right.
I'm not
in that world.
But like I've heard a folk song or two.
Yeah.
And
listening to those folk songs is like, that's what a folk song's like.
That's at the very least, even if, because I'm not like the biggest connoisseur of folk music.
Yeah.
I'm not like sit and listened to catalogs of it, but what I've heard, like this, like it really feels like it. And I mean, it earned an Oscar nomination for a best song because they wrote many actually good,
really good folk songs.
Like,
yeah.
I'm like, these are actually, I mean, in high school, and beyond still to this day, that's still an album that I listen to genuinely.
Yeah.
Because I genuinely enjoy the music.
Yeah. And it's like good folk music.
A weird like gateway into folk music. I'm like, I kind of want to learn more about folk music.
And the fact that it's almost like the joke is it is so genuine. Like the fact of its like how real it is. Like, no, I wrote a real folk song as a joke, but it's real.
But it's real.
And that's the joke, like how real it is. It's a really, I think that's a interesting niche that Christopher Guest has kind of like landed in, where it's like, this is what I'm making fun of it by making the most real version of this.
I mean, I feel like it's very similar in things like, even in like Waiting for Guffman or
For your consideration. Yeah.
There are moments of like brilliant performance that happen. And you're like, oh, that's actually good.
Yeah.
Oh, that does garner appreciation. And of course, like in general, you're supposed to be like, they're bad.
Yeah.
They're bad, or they're doing bad, or
it's like
this
they
is a bad
really
product,
have like inflated their egos a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's like that realness of like, oh,
that actually, that could be a thing.
Yeah. There's like, I see why it's happening.
Yeah.
Or why they might think that, or why, like there's enough reality in it. And it's like this, the songs aren't the joke.
Right.
Either.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the songs are jokey.
Like there are jokey. Yeah.
Because some folk music is silly.
Yeah. It's blowing you and me. Like that's such a silly line.
There's no setup to.
I don't remember the setup.
No, the whole setup is like, the thing is like.
A mighty wind's a blowing.
Here's the thing is like that the whole point, maybe not the point of it, but like this whole movie where like there's some silly folk songs. There's like Joe's Cafe or Joe's something.
Yeah,
Eat at
Joe's Place.
Joe's Place, something like that. But it's like the three folksmen. They are singing about this.
Like restaurant. It's like there's always something cooking in the kitchen.
There's a puppy in the just very silly.
Yeah.
But like, and then we get to the end, and then like Mitch and Mickey's songs are all they're nice and like sweet and simple, and like we come to this, like they build this whole show, and there's silliness, but like especially with Mitch and Mickey, we really buy into them.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I think that has a lot to do with it just being Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara.
Really, I mean, fantastic performers.
They do that style so brilliantly, where they're, again, so real in their crazy wacko characters.
Yeah. And to think that it's like heavily, it's like all improvised. They like know they know kind of the story that they've discussed with Christopher Guest, but they just kind of
don't know what they're going to say.
They just go. Yeah.
They're so good.
It's good.
I just watching them is just, I don't understand. They're so good.
Yeah.
And I really buy into their weird relationship and tension, and you end up rooting for them. And then there's a sweet moment where they get to do their song, where there's a kiss and we get to watch them kiss. And it's this like moment where you're like, you get really excited. And I think like it's really beautiful, and I like get emotional watching it for some reason. It's crazy. I'm not sure why it is so successful.
Yeah.
But it is. And then we kind of like, they end the tribute show with the song A Mighty Wind. And it's kind of like this like very like upbeat.
It's really
like
upbeat. It's great.
And like it feels really good, and and it just like, and I think it takes you after this whole song. And you know, when I saw A Mighty Wind, I'm like, ha ha ha, that sounds like a fart joke. Like that's the first thing that comes to your mind.
Right.
But then they sing the song A Mighty Wind.
It's like so
and you're like,
it's great.
Okay.
It's
like,
a great song.
The joke is that it's called A Mighty Wind, but it's not a joke song.
Right.
And then they get to the
very last line.
Peace and freedom. The last line of the song is, it's blowing you and me, which like, it comes out of nowhere, and it just like, it is so funny because it is like, it is not serious.
Yeah.
Like you can tell that it's a joke.
Yeah.
Even though they're not taking it as a joke, obviously, but like all this setup, this whole movie, and then like this whole song is like, yeah. And then they like throw the joke in like right at the end. And it's like,
because at worst it's hokey. It's like it's blowing peace and freedom. It's blowing equality. It's like very like tacky, but like
it's blowing out a message to every woman, child, and man. Like
but it's exciting. It's like an anthem. And
there's a whole bunch of people singing
blowing
together.
You and me. Oh my God.
It's blowing you and me. And
just right at the end.
The way they end, I mean, like, it gets me every time. I think it's so funny and so clever.
Yeah.
I think this movie is great. I think they have some really great characters.
Mm-hmm.
I
think there's also something about the mockumentary style that really works well. It's like no one really does it as well as Christopher Guest.
I can't even think of any others.
I mean, there's what's it called?
There's
oh my
Now.
gosh. Yeah. I mean, there's The Office and Parks and Rec.
Sure. Yes.
And then,
I think I tend to think mockumentary style for a sitcom is very interesting.
What's the one with the beauty queens?
Oh, Drop Dead Gorgeous?
Drop Dead Gorgeous. It's very good.
Love Drop Dead Gorgeous.
Yeah, it's like in that same vein. It's interesting.
But there's not as much reality in... It's not... I don't know if I'm meant to
story's a little
feel
bigger?
like... I guess I'm not... Christopher Guest makes it so that like you could go in and not know that it's a mockumentary.
Yeah.
You can go and believe that it's an actual documentary.
Mm-hmm.
Drop Dead Gorgeous, I don't think you're ever supposed to really buy that it's reality.
Right. Yeah. And there's something...
And maybe that's
I mean, that he was able to kind of like create these... I'm curious if he like started with the story first and was like, I want to do a mockumentary this way. And then it just kind of like went with it. But because the stories end up being rather small, like they're not,
well,
as we said, like
that way, I think.
Right. And the mockumentary style really like lends itself to give small stories like this importance and time. And because if we were to like just see that story like played out as a drama, it'd be nothing.
Well, right. Well, and it's small and it doesn't have to, it could be like a short story at best, like a short film or whatever, because there's not a lot to the actual arc of that story.
Right.
But making it a mockumentary where we get to expand this kind of wacky world around them while we do it and see like these little other like strings of stories along the way.
Yeah.
It allows us to digest it and be interested in it without having to just focus on it.
Right.
I think it's part of why it feels so like we don't get a lot of their interaction, but I really do feel like it's so, because we spend probably as much time with the Folksmen and the Main Street Singers as we do Mitch and Mickey.
Absolutely.
And for some reason, Mitch and Mickey's story is the story.
Right.
Like that seems to be the story of the movie. Like this is happening, which means like, oh,
we've got these sub stories happening, these kind of like simultaneous, but even they all are curious what's going to happen.
And it's not, the thing is like, and they set the story up to be like, oh, we're watching, the documentary is watching the creation of this tribute concert.
Yeah.
That's not what the story is.
Right. Right.
I think the story is about, I think it's
Mitch and Mickey. Yeah.
And we just like, and the mockumentary style like gets us to, we get
fill
to
the
enjoy
world
some
out.
of the rest of it along the way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that the framing device is the tribute concert.
Yeah.
But that's not what the story is.
Right.
It's not the story we care about, certainly.
Right. Yeah. Is there anything doesn't work?
That's hard with this one.
Just
because it's like I could do without I
don't know.
I wouldn't actually take anything out because
it's pretty good.
It's good. There's like moments, especially where like the cult about color is like really the only place where I feel like, okay, I see the reality in it, but it actually doesn't feel that real.
Right. It's a little out there.
It is so...
It's like, the most jokey kind of bit about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where Jane Lynch and I never remember his name because he has
2 first names.
Yeah.
Oh shoot! You keep talking.
Yeah, where they're part of the Main Street Singers, the new Main Street Singers, because it's like this. There's like this is commercial versus we see it's commercialism versus
John Michael Higgins.
John Michael Higgins.
Yeah.
Yes, John Michael Higgins and Jane Lynch are part of the new Main Street Singers. They're in a relationship.
She was in porn for a while.
Well, like, and they make, yes, they're in porn because one of the old Main Street Singers just like opened a
adult only
emporium kind of thing.
Yes.
The Three Wise Men.
Right.
And she was a porn star for a while, and then ended up restarting the Main Street Singers.
Mm-hmm.
But even the Main Street Singers is like kind of culty. They have this moment where, very interesting. I actually thought this was very, very successful, where like they're in a rehearsal and one of the members is like, "Can I take off my vest?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "No, you know the rules. Like you don't take off your vest until you're ready to." And you're close, but you're not.
Right.
And I'm like,
oh,
that feels so, it feels so real that this would be, I'm like, okay, I get the vibe. This is like very culty.
It's culty. Mm-hmm.
And then like a step further.
Is there in a literal cult that of their own creation?
Their religion, they're like, we don't believe in religion. We just believe in this concept that I made up in my own mind. I'm like, what are you talking about, Jane Lynch? You crazy. Just like where we worship color, and everything is a manifestation of the vibrations of the colors around us, something like that.
We're all latent color or something.
Yeah, and the way they have like these rituals around it.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe that's where it pushes it.
It's like the wackiest part that really is just like, that's a little bit beyond belief.
Right. It's where I'm like, okay, I actually would not.
Yeah.
I won't, like, if they were trying to trick us, which I don't believe he's actually trying to like trick us into thinking it's a real documentary.
Yeah.
But if they were, that's where they would lose me.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I don't think it doesn't work per se. It doesn't work if they're trying to do this thing, which I don't think they're trying to do. If that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Sure.
In context of this arbitrary goal.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably the closest I've got to something that doesn't work. I mean, it's so good.
It's good.
Yeah. I don't know. What else should we talk about for The Mighty Wind?
I guess like, because it's a mockumentary, because it's a documentary, and it's not just like, obviously the Mitch and Mickey story works.
Yeah.
It's great. It's very successful, but like there's lots of other tangential stories and richness to this world, and a lot of like, I think they're really good at like pulling out themes of the subject material they're looking at.
Yeah.
And like folk music, we look at that as a subject, and he's good at being like, okay, what would come up as a tension in the world of folk music?
Yeah.
Things like I mentioned, the Main Street Singers are like this very commercialized version of it.
Yeah.
So there's some like tension between like what is commercial versus what is like genuine.
Yeah, because you've got the like the manager character who's just like the worst.
Oh, he is awful.
Oh, geez. But he's like always like selling them. He sells them.
What is that actor's name?
Oh gosh, he is fantastic. Fred Willard, of course. It's Fred Willard. And he is like the best at being the worst.
Oh, he is.
He's so just,
but so good at it. He's
cringy. But he is always like trying to sell them on a new thing, and in the end, he like gets them on a sitcom where they're the Supreme Court, and then they sing folk music at home all together. It's so weird and weirdly believable too. It's
that
like
one, see, that one was believable.
That one I was like, oh my god, that's like weirdly so Partridge Family. It's so strange,
so weird.
But it is that tension of like, what's commercial, what is folk. The tension of even just like membership, like what do we literally play for this benefit? And like we even see like in the middle of the performance, like one of the groups sings the song that the other group meant to. And so then they were like, well, I guess we got to change right now. But the whole time they've been arguing, what is the thing we're going to sing? What are we going to sing? What are we going to sing? I want to do this. What's our set going to be like?
Yeah, and each group has its own tension.
Yeah.
It's interesting how, I guess like what I'm interested in around that is like, it seems like those things work because they give even the side tangential things their own conflicts.
Yeah. And it's real. These real, like it's what it would be in real life.
Yeah. Even the family, the
children of the yeah, it's like obviously had a weird contentious relationship with some of them. Some of them moved out. One of them is like really broken up about the whole thing. One of them hates folk music. Yeah. Another one just feels guilty because they just, didn't spend enough time with his own family.
It's so interesting that I think what Christopher Guest does so well is I think the conflicts are built in.
Yeah.
But there aren't like, between Christopher Guest and the amazing improv artists, we're not seeing them like tell us these conflicts. Like we don't have to know very much.
Yeah.
Like not a lot has to happen for us to know that these siblings
there's a conflict.
Have a conflict.
Right.
Just the way they're talking to each other, just the way they're interacting with each other gives us all of that.
Because we never actually find out.
We don't know what happened.
We never find out what happens between the siblings. We don't find out what happened between Mitch and Mickey. We don't actually know.
We don't know.
And it doesn't matter because we just know something is, and we know what it means now.
Right. Right. He's very good at not just like giving us more information than we need to know.
Yeah.
We get to just like see them existing and having these tensions be in the room.
Right.
Like the tensions are there. They're working on, they're putting together this show. That's what we're seeing them do. We get all of that exposition built into that. Right. Of course, like they're a documentary, so some of the exposition is like very easy. You could just be like,
well, it's like, this is where we came from. Mm-hmm. This is what we're going to be doing. Here's my train set. Yeah, it's like those.
And it's interesting because like really we get the most like description of the tension about Mitch and Mickey. Like we do talk about Mitch and Mickey and their past, but that kind of like adds to the like the mystery of it.
Yeah, because it's other people talking about it too, right, in a large part.
All of the conjecture around it. It's not the, like we're like, well, this happened and well, all we know is that
he left. All we know is we have these.
And then he has these albums.
These weird albums. Yeah.
I'm in a mental institution.
Yeah.
I want to be buried. Like they were like.
Yeah. Make it end. Something like that. Yeah.
It's like very obvious, but also like they leave it up to interpretation.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, just piggybacking off of what you notice about the format of the mockumentary style too. Yeah. It's like how that brings out the story. It's like if you using that as the backbone, right? Mm-hmm. That you can pretty easily, I mean, not easily, but it's a very smart move to use that to build out a story because like you can just watch, if you watch any documentary, you see it's like, this is actually how we fill out this world. Yes, the story is Mitch and Mickey and we see their arc, we see their whatever conflict there is, and we see the mystery of it, and we see them kind of come together for a kiss at the end. But only that could happen in the context of this larger world. And so we need to see what the larger world is like to build the larger world out. We know we need to have descriptions of all these things. We need to see them. We need to see inside their homes, and it gives us little bits and pieces of like what life is like in order to facilitate a conflict like this.
Right.
And I think that's a really interesting lesson for all stories.
Sure.
Because everything is about context, and it is not always clear what context is important for a story to be possible.
Yeah.
And it's not always just like the obvious, like, well, you need to know the backstory, and then this is all of the reasoning. Sometimes it is just like, well, the world has these kinds of tensions in it.
Yeah.
And they reflect these things. And so in a world in which these things are important, a conflict like Mitch and Mickey being in love or not being able to communicate or whatever is a possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I'm sitting here thinking about what differentiates this kind of mockumentary versus something like Drop Dead Gorgeous. Mm-hmm. And that one is like, it's very much like we are following the Kirsten Dunst character.
Yeah.
Trying to win a pageant.
Yes. Yeah. There's a very clear, yeah.
We do follow some of the other, but we're following like one thing.
Right.
We know what the story is because it's like, it's told as a story.
And there's a clear villain. There's,
it's very much like crafted as like a story. A documentary generally is we don't know what the story is.
It unfolds as we go.
Like the people filming have no idea what we're going to care about.
Yeah.
They just know that there's something. I mean, like listen to Serial and you're like, what the F
it just
happened?
keeps going.
Because
or S-Town. It's just like, what is this?
And S-Town. Both of them were like,
we start investigating and then a story happens.
Stories happen. Life is, that's what we do as humans. We pull stories out of life. And that's what like that mockumentary style where we get to kind of explore and throw things at the wall, see what sticks. But I'm curious how much is pre-planned, or if they do it like a documentary where they're essentially like, we're following this event getting done.
Right.
We don't know what the little stories and little pieces are that come out of it.
We're going to improvise, and whatever happens, we're going to craft that.
We'll craft it. We'll edit it in the room. Because just like a documentary, you just film everything and cut out the stuff that doesn't
tell the story
that you've found.
Right.
I wonder if he finds some of it after the filming.
I hope so. It seems that way because
if he doesn't, he's so fucking brilliant.
That's I know, to be able to mimic that organic storytelling, because I think documentary is like the most organic way to tell story. You haven't really, obviously, you haven't like planned it out, so it has to kind of unfold as you discover more things, and you make the connections about what things actually were important rather than deciding ahead of time.
Yeah.
Well, and if he's able to craft that, that's
wild.
That'd be crazy. I bet that he's like having them improvise on the camera and then kind of, they might know some things. They're like, I'm imagining this and this and this and this, which is also a thing the documentary people do. They're like, I think this is kind of the story I'm going to discover.
Course. They believe that there's a story there and they have an idea of what it is.
Yeah.
Obviously.
But
but the thing is like, just like a good documentary would be like, oh, there's more, I'm following it.
Yeah. Right. It's like, oh my gosh, look what Eugene Levy just said. I'm going to move on that.
Yeah. And something about like, I mean, I have to, because it was a big shock that they had received an Oscar nomination.
Yeah.
For this silly song, which I think is a great song.
It's a beautiful song.
Really beautiful song. Kiss at the End of the Rainbow.
Oh.
And I don't know where that happened in the process of the creativity, because it's such a really great framework to build in a climax, or like a climactic moment. It's a really cool device. It is so, I honestly think like that song is the reason that movie is so successful, because not only is it a good song, but it also, because it like has this element where they kiss,
and And will they, won't they?
It builds that in. It builds the tension. It builds the question. It's so simple, but so effective in making us care.
Yeah. I mean, it tells us a lot about their past. It's so full of meaning.
Yeah.
I mean, a kiss generally is, but just that will they, won't they tells us everything about that story.
Yeah.
They used to, now they don't.
And the song,
was it love? Was it not?
Kind of talks about that in theme.
Yeah.
Talks about the importance of kiss and
the connection and wow. It's good.
Yeah, it's good. I think it's very interesting, just like the whole mockumentary style. But also, this is my favorite of the Christopher Guest movies.
Yeah.
For like hands down.
Yeah.
I like them all.
Yeah.
But this one is my favorite. I think it's the most cohesive. I think it's the most like a story. It's the one I care about the most.
Yeah. It's wholesome. There's something very sweet. It's very sweet. And the music is fun. Like, who doesn't like music?
Yeah.
There's a lot of good music, and they're like playing it live.
Good.
It's good.
And they're playing it and singing it live.
Yeah.
Just like watching Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara perform live at the Oscars. Like,
really cool.
very cool.
I remember watching that as a kid. It's cool.
Yeah. They're good.
Yeah.
And especially, we talked about this too, like how now that Schitt's Creek has come out and like, honestly, beautiful vehicle to like
see
get
them
us to fall in love again.
Yeah, because we
people.
fall in love with them again. And it's like they spent all this time, they're like best friends. Ugh,
Yeah.
I love it.
We care about them as people.
Beautiful Canadians.
They're so good.
Love them.
And it makes me care about them more. And they're so good.
Yeah.
They're wacko. I mean, like, talk about
Who isn't like tapping Catherine O'Hara for like more stuff?
I don't know.
Is it her just like turning stuff down because she's like awesome, or are people just like snoozing on her because
She's gonna be in that new Argyle movie.
Oh yes,
Argyle.
I forgot. She's
Yeah,
the mom,
she's the
right? I want her to all over the place.
Yeah, I want some like hardcore Oscar baity.
Yes.
I want like
I want it. It should be good.
She's so good. Like underutilized.
I just had a thought.
Yeah.
We were casting The Simpsons with real actors. I think she's Mrs. Krabappel.
Oh my God.
Maybe we'll do a little short on the social media with like what our casting is for The Simpsons, the live action. Alive or dead, like any actor, alive or dead, just who would be work. Anyway, shall we rate?
Let's rate
Let's do it. Story.
5. It's like, it's one of those instances where I'm like, the way it's set up is they can get away with a lot of things, and they do. And I am fully bought into every piece of the story, even the ridiculous ones.
Yeah, same. And it's that, like, I think maybe like judging it as like a story, like any like an epic is like, that doesn't make any sense because it's not. It's like it is a documentary, and it does the documentary thing really well.
I mean, perfect. I think it is
it tells a documentary story.
Movie.
Yeah.
It is like my number one.
Yeah, it's great. Loved it. So 5 for me too. All right, technical. This is acting, filming.
I mean, the songs, the way they're written and performed.
Yeah,
the voices that they use.
That's the thing that like I'm giving it a 5 because it's performed, and I mean performed in all ways really well. If it's played live, it's sung. The little voices that they give, like Christopher Guest's weird like folky voice. Beautiful.
It sounds. I mean, it really puts me in that place.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, they did it. They sound great.
Yeah.
They sound amazing. They sound like folk singers.
Yeah.
The songs sound like folk songs. I'm like, oh, they could do this.
They could just do it. Yeah. It's good. 5 here too.
I'm going to say 5.
So 5. Yeah.
Just like those, I think they use their technical elements really well.
Yep. Yeah.
They're not doing anything crazy with the
filming.
Crazy,
yeah, of course.
Documentary.
Right. And it does exactly what it's supposed to.
Yeah. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be above and beyond to be
excellent. Technically
excellent.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be Saltburn, which is like gorgeous cinematography.
Yeah.
Like beautiful.
This is not
images.
that kind of movie. It's not supposed to have gorgeous cinematography. It's a documentary.
Yeah.
Ugh. Rewatch value. 5.
I mean,
5's across the board.
I know this one is, I can't.
It's pretty good. And it's interesting, like thinking about that. It's like, why does this end up on a list of like best films of all time? You know, it's like,
it's not even listed on most lists as Christopher Guest's best film.
Yeah. It's
which
like,
blows my mind because I think it's the best.
Yeah.
I would say it's hard when things are kind of like perfect like this. I think people tend to gravitate to things that have an extremity.
Yeah.
That like, it isn't the funniest Christopher Guest.
Right. That's true.
There are funnier Christopher Guest movies. There are funnier movies.
Right.
There are just like Oscars are looking for like the most dramatic, the most whatever.
Right.
We're looking for extremes on top of really well done for those kinds of, for people to think
right
about.
And it like really
being like,
oh, it's good.
Best.
You know, it's Lord of the Rings. It's long and dramatic, and there's a lot of CGI goes into it, and there's swords and death, and
it's impressive.
Yeah, and it's impressive, but in smaller ways. It's a quietly, yeah. So it's 5s across the board. It's like, I mean, it's good.
Yeah. I guess like the things that are like really well done and perfect aren't the things that we tend to think of as more valuable.
Yeah, that's true.
Things like good folk imitation. You know what I mean? Like good improv generally.
Yeah.
Really well played wacky characters.
Yeah.
Those don't tend to feel like the things that people think are like,
right.
The pivotal things.
They're looking at Meryl Streep drama and stunts and effects and costume and you know, really extravagant things. It's interesting too, because I wonder, I don't know if I would even put it on my list of top 10 movies, despite having giving it 5s across the board. Because there are probably movies where I wouldn't have give 5s across the board that would end up on my top 10 list, which is interesting.
I think too, I mean, speaking to that, like the extremities, usually that means we're heavy in one area and less in another. That imbalance feels good and exciting too.
Right.
I think that probably accounts for some of that.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't come up necessarily as I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. And I mean, some of those just like, what do I like?
But part of that socially too, like when you think like best movies, you start to picture.
Yeah. Well, it's like the ones that I'm thinking even
the Academy Award winners that
sure,
I like.
But I'm just thinking like what do I want to watch again and again and again? And this has great rewatch value. I would absolutely rewatch it.
Yeah. It's like, I guess I haven't rewatched it as much as like The Birdcage.
Right. Or The Fifth Element, you know, or Emperor's New Groove.
The Fifth Element, I wouldn't give all 5s to, I don't think.
No, I don't think I would either. But the rewatch value is at a 5.
New Groove, I would.
I mean, maybe I have to give a 4 then to a rewatch value for Mighty Wind.
Yeah. If it's not,
it just might be a 4. It is absolutely. I would absolutely rewatch it, but it doesn't end up on. It
doesn't come up.
It's not a Moonstruck for me. It's not a
honestly like,
Lord of the Rings for me.
I think one of the reasons I haven't is because I also don't feel like other people like it as much as me. I just assume that other people don't. It felt like a guilty pleasure for a while.
Oh, weird. Well, it also admittedly would be one that I would be very comfortable just having like on in the background.
Sure.
Just like, tired. It's a day off.
I
just
guess
like turn
I
it
would
on.
expect like bringing it up and people being like, I don't know if I want to watch that. I guess like that's my
Oh wow.
that's
Yeah.
my thought about it. So I wouldn't like the birdcage is perfect, and I'm like, I don't care what other people think. Like it's perfect. But especially like it being mockumentary style.
Sure.
And it being about folk music, and I think a lot of people probably haven't seen it because they're like, it's about folk music. Why do I care about
right.
that?
It's like boring. It's not.
It's not at all.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting. But
all right. So then for me, it's a 5.54.
Okay. I'm still 5s.
Okay.
I still think it has great rewatch value.
Yeah, it does. It's a 4.
Yeah, great.
All right. Oscar-worthy moment.
So many good.
I think it has to be the song on the stage.
The one that was nominated
The one that was
for an
nominated
Oscar.
for an
Yes.
Oscar.
I mean, obviously, like, it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe the moment where he brings back that
Brings
rose.
back the rose. I was just going to say, bringing the rose back.
It is excellent.
Where she's like looking for him and he's like gone. And she's like, what are you doing? We're supposed to be on. And he's like, I just was looking for the perfect one. And it was the rose.
That's it. That's enough.
And that was it. And she was like, oh, that smells good.
Ooh, it's
It's
so
a good moment. It's a really good.
It feels so good.
Yeah.
Where like, it's scary. You're like, where did he go? Did he abandon it? Good tension.
Yeah.
And it's just like him being a weirdo.
Yeah. Looking for this rose. I'm going to amend mine. I think it's my Oscar-worthy moment is an obscure moment that happens when the man who is like organizing the event is like inspecting the set an hour before curtain.
Well, here's the thing. It's like before you do that, I want to do some like other fun moments.
Okay, never mind. So then good. We'll do that in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Unearned moment.
Yeah, I'll do the color.
Yeah.
Especially the ritual they do. It just like feels very, they like light a candle.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
they sing a song like red, yellow, yeah. Red, orange, yellow, blue.
Yeah.
Or green, blue. They do the rainbow. Yeah. I think.
And again, it is like, it's the closest to bringing me out of what could be reality to anything else.
Yeah, I buy that. I think for me, an unearned moment would be just at the end watching the 3 folksmen, and one of them is transgender now. One of them is living the rest of his life as a woman. And it just seems a little, it was like a punchline, it's like a joke at the end of the movie that just kind of isn't needed.
Sure.
Like, I'm not sure why. There is like there are
like
funny things about it where it's like he's the bass and he's dressed as a woman, etc. It's just,
yeah, there was some tension about like what they wanted to wear on stage.
oh yeah, I guess.
Where he's like advocating for something and you're like, I'm not really sure what you're talking about. Like there's confusing about like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
About like costumes. And I think that was like
That's
some of
the
hints.
punchline.
I don't know if it's a punchline, because part of it too is like, we've all seen those documentaries. You're like,
Wait, what?
what just happened? That wasn't part of anything.
That took a turn. Yeah.
And because it wasn't a feature until it was like real life.
Right.
It came out of.
Yeah, maybe I didn't notice the jokes come out like with, I remember the conversations about like what they're wearing on stage, but I didn't connect that to,
I think it
like
may
wanting
have been
to
like
wear
a slight bit of a hint of like it wasn't, but it's not obvious. Like he's not like saying anything about it.
Right.
And I honestly thought it was like most of the joke was he's now identifying as a woman and still singing with bass voice.
Yeah.
I think that was like the joke
Right.
about it. But they were very respectful, even to today's standard, of the language they used around it.
Yeah.
And the, like the way the characters treat that character.
Yeah.
I thought it was like pretty respectful of.
I think maybe, I think what I found unearned was it's like the last thing we see.
Yeah. It's just like I don't know. That feels like a documentary thing where you're like, but
that wasn't the story, you know. It's like it was like the weird random.
It's the whole movie.
I know,
but it's like a documentary.
I understand, but even in a documentary, I feel like we would see.
But they don't have a choice when it's a documentary because it's real life.
Sure, but
they wouldn't have not shown these.
Yeah, but they could do it in a different order. Like they show these people 6 months later, and so we see the new. New Main Street Singers 6 months later are on the sitcom. Show. We see Mitch and Mickey, and then we see the Three Folksmen, but they could have switched Three Folksmen and Mitch and Mickey, so we see that like bittersweet end.
Yeah, but we don't want to end like that.
I think I would have liked the end like that. Maybe it wouldn't be on brand for Christopher Guest. He needs a joke at the end. Yeah. But I don't know. I think I would have liked it more the other way.
Okay. I don't think it's unearned, but it might be a taste thing.
Yeah, maybe. All right. What did you want to do for extra superlative?
I just
superlative.
Like best improv moment.
Yep. Okay, cool.
I mean, it could be so many things.
There's so many. Okay.
I am going to go with Jennifer Coolidge.
Yes.
Because something I quote all the time is like Catherine O'Hara's husband is like obsessed with model trains.
Oh my God.
And yeah, and me realizing this time, I'm like, oh, she just went for someone else who was just as weird as Eugene Levy's character.
Yeah.
Like, oh, but he's like the normal version, like the outwardly normal version.
Right.
But he's like obsessed with trains.
Yeah.
Like maybe something neurodivergent is going on. Right. Just like we're picking up those pieces from Eugene Levy, and she's like drawn to it.
Yeah.
Which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I thought that was very interesting this time. Because he's at some party and this like talking to this woman who's in PR who clearly does nothing.
It's Jennifer Coolidge.
Who is so freaking funny. Oh my God, it's so stupid.
She does her like weird like German accent that she did on Frasier. It's so funny.
It's so funny. But he's like, oh, I really love model trains. She's like, oh yeah, I love the model trains, but without the model trains, they wouldn't have gotten the idea for the big ones. And like we say that. I say that. I don't say it that much because nobody knows what it is. That's like part of the, no one knows what that
freaking funny.
But I think that line is so out there. And we used to say, we say it all the time. When I'm with my sisters, we say it all the time.
That's so funny.
And
it's a good
got
moment.
A lot of like blank stares from Pavi even.
Yep. I get it now. It's been a while since I'd seen it. My best improv moment is with, as I was going to say.
You tell me
okay, so it's like there's I
just didn't want you to like.
I know the man who runs the city hall events is like giving the final walkthrough to the producer, the one of the brothers of the dead man they're doing their in memoriam for. And he's like going through and it's like talking about, he's like pointing at the set and being like, well, this is like this banjo is flat. They're just not a real banjo. Is that going to be a problem? And he's like going through like pointing out all these like weird like stagecraft things. And the man who runs the theater is so annoyed with him that he gets progressively more snarky. It's this, and the whole scene is brilliant. And at the end, he just like slaps him on the head. It's so funny.
It's Michael Hitchcock is that actor. Who's just also
so funny
in it for like 3 seconds, but like
really good,
very funny.
Really funny. Movie. Yep. Loves singing.
Not good at it.
Sings the Gounod Ave Maria. And it's so stupid.
It's so, he's very funny.
It's so good.
Slaps like on the head.
I know. He's so funny. Oh my God. All right, let's wrap it up, shall we?
Let's do it.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Two Grooms, One Plot. Follow us on the Instagram and the TikTok, and subscribe on the YouTubes and anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Thank you, and see you again next time. I am Pavi Proczko, and remember, a mighty wind's a-blowin' you and me.
And I'm Colin Funk. And remember, without the model trains, they wouldn't have gotten the idea for the big ones.
See you later. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Two Grooms, One Plot, a Pavitas Productions project, hosted by Colin Funk and Pavi Proczko. This podcast was produced by Chicago Podcast Studio. Our opening cartoon was created by Gloriu, and our theme song was composed by me, Pavi Proczko. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite listening platform. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Two Grooms, One Plot for updates on new episodes and behind-the-scenes content. If you have any feedback, comments, concerns, or kudos, you can email us at twogroomsoneplot@gmail.com. Please rate and review us wherever you can. It would help us out a bunch. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next time.